Okay, here we are live to tape. And it is me, Aaron Hagstrom. I used to be Aaron Moffat, as some of you guys would know. And I have my friend Nathan here. Welcome, Nathan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Looks like you're coming through well for me, and the chat will let us know. But I appreciate you coming on because, as you know, I have been expressing my desire to learn about health and wellness from an actual health and wellness standpoint. And in that journey, I have learned that I have been a very unhealthy person for 45 years now, eating garbage food, putting on garbage chemicals on my skin and in my hair. And we'll talk about the breathing chemicals but I haven't done anything really to change this, and I felt overwhelmed about doing anything about it. And so I thought you would be a great person to bring on, Nathan, to tell us the journey that you have had to go through that forced you to start doing this. I'm not ill, but you became ill, and you had to change your life. So if you don't mind, give us a little background of what led you to understanding health and wellness the way that you understand it today.
Well, it started about, I guess, almost 9 years ago now. I was out camping and got bit by a tick. And there was a young gal that was in my group. She also got bit by a tick, and she got the bullseye rash. I did not, but I ended up with very severe Lyme disease, despite not getting the classic bullseye. And Lyme was not my first diagnosis. However, I think it is truly the original thing that caused a whole cascade of health issues for me. I was diagnosed first as a diabetic when I was 19, exactly 1 week before my wedding day. And a month into my marriage, my diagnosis was adjusted to being specifically type 1, and I started on insulin and learning how to, check my blood sugar and monitor that and dose the insulin properly. And then about 5 months after that, my mother-in-law heard about a Lyme disease doctor in Missouri. And she said, with all my other strange symptoms I was having, I ought to go get checked out by him. And so I go and I sit in a big seminar first where the doctor explained Lyme disease and what it does and how it can essentially affect every part of the body. One of its nicknames is called Master's disease, because it is basically a master of all diseases. It can masquerade itself as hundreds of other health issues. And I got very sick very quickly after I got married. I was having a lot of seizures and passing out from my blood sugar going low. The Lyme disease, for about a month or two prior to me getting diagnosed, it somehow started to paralyze me from the waist down. And there would be just random days or random hours where I could not feel anything below my waist. I couldn't feel my knees, my toes. I couldn't wiggle anything. And so I would just have to drag myself across the floor to the bathroom just because I couldn't get anything to function. And after being diagnosed and with the Lyme and starting on antibiotic treatment, it stopped the paralysis from getting worse and becoming permanent. Unfortunately, full body paralysis it's a rare symptom of chronic Lyme disease. because it is the Lyme disease is able to burrow into your joints, into your nerves. It can block nerve pathways. It leaves little tiny holes and tunnels through your body tissues. It's called a spirochete bacteria, and I truly don't believe it's a bacteria. Not with how it can leave holes in the body. I truly think it is a type of parasite. And I was on antibiotics for 2 years. I've taken every antibiotic that is out there multiple times. I tried different hormone therapies. The only one that was helpful was oxytocin. My Lyme disease doctor, about a year in, said he was conducting a study where he was testing his patients' oxytocin levels. And he had determined that low oxytocin was a common symptom of Lyme. And so he tested me, and I got a letter in the mail telling me what the level was. And my wife and I argued over it for 2 months before I saw the doctor again, because there was multiple numbers. I thought it said 0. She thought it said some other number. So we go and see the doctor, and I asked him, I said, so what's my level? My wife and I have been arguing about it for months. And the doctor looked at me and he said, well, you're the first patient ever to test for 0 oxytocin. I had absolutely none. And oxytocin is it's known as the love hormone. It is a bonding and social hormone. Most people associate it with childbirth and babies, but men require it too in order to be happy, honestly, and to feel emotion. My wife said for almost a year before I got treatment for that I was like a robot with no emotions.
Let me interrupt you for a second. How do you think do you think this is related to the Lyme disease, that your oxytocin levels dropped to nothing?
Yes. He couldn't tell me why there was an association. He had heard he had attended a seminar and learned about it from other doctors studying Lyme disease. And so he started conducting the study in his clinic as well, and started to find the same correlation of low oxytocin levels with people with chronic Lyme, which leads to a very different type of depression. Because I have had depression on and off in my lifetime, and it was nothing like experiencing 0 oxytocin. I just, when you're depressed, sometimes you feel like you're numb, or you feel, really sad. With 0 oxytocin, you don't feel at all anything. I don't even know, like, there's not a good way to explain it. I didn't care about anything. It was weird. I was trying to help my dad out and work for him a little bit, on and off when I would have good days. But the more I pushed myself, the sicker I would get. And essentially, yes.
I was going to say, when you initially started this, you went to a regular allopathic physician. Did you already mention that, and that they had put you on lots of different big pharma medications?
Well, actually, I had gone to a regular doctor and got the type 1 diabetes diagnosis. The Lyme disease doctor, he was an actual alternative doctor, but he had various amounts of treatments and routes that a person could go. And he basically said I could do an allopathic Western approach to healing the Lyme, which involved hormones, antibiotics, regular blood testing, and stuff like that. Or he said I could take a more naturopathic approach and change my diet and start taking a whole bunch of natural supplements And I was so sick, or he said I could do a mixture of both too, which I did a couple of his alternative treatments, one of which helped a lot. But it was, my choice to do the antibiotics, and it was just because I didn't know how to change my diet. I was so sick and mentally so foggy that it just was too complicated at first.
Which is one
And
of the things we want to talk about today, is that it can be overwhelming to when we start discussing the kind of diet a person might need to change to, but we want to help everybody understand, like, one thing at a time, and you'll start getting there. So anyway, go ahead with the
yeah,
antibiotics.
yeah. So I took 2 years of antibiotics. I took one new antibiotic every 4 weeks the first year. The second year, I took two antibiotics for 4 weeks, a week break, and then another two. And then the very last two medications I tried were malaria medications, because I was diagnosed with a co-infection called Babesia. And Babesia is, I believe it's a protozoa, and it is like the American relative to malaria in Africa. It's not as deadly, but it is very chronic, and it a lot of times when you get Lyme, you also are infected with various other tick-borne illnesses. There's also like Rocky Mountain fever is another one. The alpha-gal syndrome, which is when you get bit by certain ticks, it can make you allergic to red meat and give you hives and severe stomach inflammation. And it took me many years to realize it, but I was also infected with the alpha-gal syndrome.
Sounds almost like a bioweapon or something to me.
Oh yeah, it sure does. It sure does. Yeah, there is so much to the Lyme and everything that can come with it. It just seems pretty far from natural to me. Um, and one of the treatments that I did that helped, and I don't mean to freak anyone out. If anyone has an extreme fear of hearing about needles, maybe mute me for a minute. But I did a very extreme treatment called prolotherapy 2 different times, and it's basically an injection of sugar water and lidocaine. And I know that sounds crazy, but there is a lot of
Is that
like
intramuscular, not probably intravenous, right?
it
Into the
it
muscle.
it it is into the joint. It
Oh,
is
okay.
all the way. It is all the way. That goes through the cartilage to the base of your joint. It is a very big needle, and the reason I did that was because of the Lyme disease had burrowed all throughout my spine, my knees, all my major joints, and given me arthritis. And I was only 20 years old when I started having arthritic type problems. In fact, when I sat down for the first conference for that Lyme disease doctor, right when I sat down, my right kneecap popped out of place just from me sitting down. That's how weak the cartilage and tendons in my knee was from the Lyme disease eating at it for just maybe 8 months at that point.
So what do you think?
Uh,
What do you think Lyme disease actually is? I jokingly said a bioweapon, but we want to talk about what causes illness in people. And so, what do you think is that the base thing causing all of this illness for you in that one particular disease?
I think this is probably a genetically enhanced parasite.
So, a living kind of creature that just a regular parasite cleanse isn't fully getting rid of, or would you say
Right.
okay?
Right. If I would have got bit and then immediately done a parasite cleanse, then I probably could have killed it. But the problem is that it took about 8 months from the time I was bit until I got a diagnosis. And so that Lyme disease was able to set up shop in deeper, harder to reach areas of my body. And Lyme disease also has different phases, kind of. It's honestly kind of like a Pokemon. And I know that sounds nuts, but like this is what my Lyme disease doctor actually taught me. They can go dormant, and when they go dormant, they put up what's called a bioshield around them, and it's very hard for antibiotics or your immune system to get through that bioshield to kill the Lyme. And there's also an active form, where it's actively moving throughout your body, and that's when you need to hit it, is when it's in an active phase. And then I believe there's a third phase too. And this bugger's so evil. When you start to kill enough of them, they release a neurotoxin, and all parasites, and even certain, like if you have certain like extreme fungal infections, they can cause what's called a Herxheimer reaction, where as the critters die inside you, they release this poison essentially, and it can make you way sicker. And I was told that's how I knew a medicine was working. It was if I started taking like a new antibiotic or a new supplement or whatever, if I developed a Herxheimer reaction where I got really sick within the first week or two, then I knew it was working. And it sounds very opposite of what you would think healing is like, but there are some things that they get in you and they don't want you to heal. And the whole point of the Herxheimer is to get you to stop what you're doing so they stop dying. Like they're dying and they're trying to take you with them, essentially. Of course, most people don't get so sick that they, do almost die, but I have heard some pretty gnarly testimonies of other people with Lyme disease who had such like actual life-threatening Herxheimer reactions. But most people who aren't that chronic won't have like a life-threatening reaction to it.
That was the question I was going to ask you. What do you suppose? There are people that get this. I've just pulled up on the website just the basic Mayo Clinic symptoms and stages of Lyme. What do you suppose is the difference between the person that just gets it acutely versus the person that gets it chronically?
Well, I think part of it is timing. If you realize you have a problem and you get it diagnosed quickly, you start treating it quickly, then it's not gonna be as bad. But there are certain types of infections that they are really slow at making you ill, and you don't realize just how deep it is. And it can it can become chronic just slowly over time. And different people's immune systems are differently, and your immune system is constantly in flux with your mental and emotional state as well. I truly believe that the reason that I got the Lyme so much worse than the other girl who got it, was because 2 weeks after I was bit, I suddenly lost one of my best friends in a horrible car accident. And so I already had the Lyme in me, and then I went through this horrible trauma. And trauma and deep sadness like that can really lower your immune system and allow these things deeper in.
Do you think your type 1 diabetes had anything to do with any of it?
Yes, I've figured that I've known this since the beginning. Like, I didn't get the type 1 diabetes until about a month after I was bit. And diabetes does not run in my family. No one has type 1. I had like a great aunt who was like 80 or 70 something when she got diagnosed with type 2. Like, she was very old. She was very overweight and in a nursing home. And so diabetes just didn't run in my family. There are autoimmune diseases that run in my family, but none of them diabetes.
Right. So it's your belief that it's not an autoimmune disease and it possibly is related to the Lyme infestation.
Yes. Hopefully I could say this without getting the video in trouble. So in about 2020, I discovered a study from 2019, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to find it again, but they actually made a discovery with type 1 diabetes. This one study. It was only one study, I think, but they made a discovery that there is a type of parasite that is within the pancreas of type 1 diabetics, and it sits right in front of the insulin ducts, and it consumes the insulin as it comes out.
Yeah, and that's what we were going to talk about is there with all illness, there's certain things that can lead to it. And we are everything we talk about today as far as diet and supplements are to in order to get any illness down to what we call a viral cold to cancer, Lyme disease, the things that you're dealing with. And parasites was the first thing we were going to talk about, is that the parasites are probably and a lot of people might already know this, so we might be preaching to the choir, but it's even more so than people might think. For instance, with the type 1 diabetes you were just mentioning, how many people do you think try to attack it from a parasitic standpoint? And going back to the Lyme, if you said if you don't treat it right away, well, if you go to Mayo Clinic, they say you need to get on antibiotics right away. And if I remember right, you said the antibiotics cause so much damage to your body as well.
Yes. I don't know how or why it works, but there are certain antibiotics that do seem to work on Lyme disease. Not they don't work well, most of them, but they do still produce Herxheimer type reactions, the same as like if, say, I take an oregano oil, for a detox or something. Like, I'll get a Herxheimer from taking, a lot of oregano. And I just lost my train of thought.
I guess, yeah, I was asking, I think I asked about, treating the Lyme disease with an antibiotic and how it affected your body. And
Yes, okay. Yeah, so it completely destroyed my gut microbiome. It wiped out all of the good bacteria in my stomach and my intestines. A lot of people don't realize this, but it's not just stomach acid that is digesting your food. It is bacteria, funguses, and there are microscopic plants and animals within your digestive system that help you absorb the nutrients. Like, they literally like kind of eat the food for you in a way. Like, your stomach acid breaks it down so that it is small enough for them to eat and then give you the nutrients. Well, there are good and bad bacteria, fungi, all kinds of stuff in your body. And when you take antibiotics, it wipes everything out except for the most resistant things. And the longer you're on antibiotics, the more you kill. And I ended up with an extreme case of a yeast infection within my stomach and intestines. It's also known as candida. And I mean, this thing, candida, it is alive. It's a living fungus. And truly, I think it could be considered a parasite. I don't think all parasites are necessarily worms. Parasite is any negative microscopic thing that lives in your stomach. Oh man, I just keep losing my train of thought.
I pulled up a website that talks about the germ theory versus the terrain theory, but I think I would lean more towards the terrain theory, that if our body is not balanced well, if we don't have the microbiome, like you mentioned, in the gut, in a good healthy situation, then these things that actually wouldn't normally affect us, like bacteria or even some parasites or what germs, that's when they start to make us sick, is when our terrain is not in a good balance. It's kind of like the
Right.
earth. If the earth terrain is not balanced, which it balances itself out very well, and so do our bodies, but what we're finding is there are being things introduced to our bodies that are sort of controllable and sort of not controllable, and that would be like the parasites, the toxins. And we distinguish between toxins and poisons, being toxins are kind of non-intentional poisons, or they could be. I mean, whatever. You can define that however a person wants to. But poisons certainly being intentional, like big pharma or chemtrails, and funguses. Where wouldn't you say that if we can bring our body back to a state of balanced health, that these things might not get to the level that they get to, and we wouldn't be getting sick?
Right. And something I would suggest to anyone wanting to increase the good bacteria and fauna and flora within your gut is to find something, like fermented foods like kefir, yogurts, kombucha. My wife's gonna listen to this later and mock me for how I
say
say
it both
kombucha.
ways.
And I would say add stuff to your diet before you start to take things away. Because if you take things away before you understand what good things to replace them with, it can get really depressing because you just start looking at what you can't have. First, look at what you can have to increase your health and your gut fauna and flora, and then start to look at the things that are damaging it. And antibiotics are obviously damaging to your gut microbiome. And a source of antibiotics that most people don't think of is factory farm chicken. And factory farm chicken is just pumped full of antibiotics. And so when you eat that chicken, you're also eating the antibiotics it ate. Glyphosate is another thing that destroys your gut. And they spray that on wheat and corn and soy. I truly think that the real reason that people are suddenly becoming sensitive to gluten it's not gluten's fault. Okay, we've been eating gluten for thousands of years. The problem is, for one, most wheat is genetically modified, but also farmers spray it with Roundup in order to kill it and dry it and harvest it quicker. The farmers used to have to wait for the summer sun to dry their wheat for them before they could harvest it, but they found out that, hey, if we just spray it with glyphosate, it'll kill it and dry it really quick. And so they do that right before they harvest it and send it off to the mills to be turned into bread and flour and everything else.
You make a good point too about the chicken and the beef. So we'll get into what people can do to get these things out of their body, but to avoid them altogether. But certainly, you start thinking, what do I do? I can't. I buy my chicken and beef from the grocery store. I try to check the ingredients and I try to be mindful, but it's a lot to start thinking about. That the chicken, even if it says organic, we don't know what they're feeding them. They might be feeding them GMO. They might be feeding them glyphosate grains. So,
That is very true. Like soy, it is very hard to find chicken feed without soy in it. And soy, I had an allergy to eggs for most of my life, and I walked into this new farm store that popped up in town, and they had the sign, and it said soy-free chicken eggs, and it explained that when the chickens eat the soy, that the phytoestrogens within the soy are concentrated inside the egg yolk, and so you're getting like a higher amount of soy in the egg yolk than if you were actually eating just soy. And
yeah, right.
I found that farm and I started buying soy-free chicken feed for my ducks so that I could actually eat the eggs. And because I tried their soy-free chicken eggs, and it was the first egg I'd had that didn't kill my stomach.
So one of these, so we have to learn where we're getting the poison from, and it's easy to say wheat. We know that one, but we have to start thinking about where we're sourcing our chicken, where we're sourcing our beef. Now I'm in Montana, and we have a lot of ranchers that we know, so I'm able to source my beef from a rancher who grass feeds them, so they're not getting the glyphosate wheat. And the chicken is not the case. So for now, I'm still getting chicken that isn't good. It's not good chicken. But don't stress out, everybody, because one of the things that what we can do is we can do a lot less of this. Our bodies are capable of clearing out a lot of stuff. Our bodies are made to do that. And while we're getting overwhelmed by it now to a point that our bodies are becoming sick, we're becoming ill. And it's not by viruses. It's my belief that it's not my belief, it's been my research that no virus, not one, has ever been isolated at all. It's what they're seeing is not a virus. They're not actually isolating it. They threw away the rules in the rule book for cautious postulates on how to isolate any kind of thing that they think is infecting or diseasing the body. So viruses are just made up. It's a complete hoax, but that's probably going to be medical misinformation for YouTube, but that's okay because we're streaming on many other platforms today, and this video will be saved and I can upload it to Rumble later. So we can go ahead and say whatever we want, but understanding the toxins and where they're coming from is a big thing, and it's just one step at a time, like reading the ingredients. And you can probably speak to this, but the first time I started reading the ingredients, I was like, oh, good, I don't have natural flavors is one of the things we want to watch out for because they're anything but natural. I said, okay, great. I picked out some food without natural flavors or artificial flavors, but guess what else was in it? Seed oils. So it gets really difficult to go to a grocery store and buy any food.
Yeah, it's the more you look, the more you realize everything has got the same BS ingredients.
Yeah. So also in the groundwater here, a friend of ours who cured his own cancer, and I'm showing some. Sorry, I've just been muted. I apologize. I'm showing some slides from a guy who gave a talk on cancer. He had the water tested. He's a local guy. So I'm just showing some of his slides so that you guys have a visual. But unrelated to the slide, he had the water tested on the west end of town, and it was showing pharmaceuticals in the water. So somehow pharmaceuticals were getting into, must be in the ditch and in the water that's draining into the ditches, from the ditches, and it could be from the drain fields for people's homes on the land. So if anyone's aware, when you have your own land and you have to figure out your own sewer, you probably know this, Nathan, maybe everybody else does, but it was kind of new to me learning about, because we're just moving out onto 8 acres, is the drain field is how you have to set up all your sewage and your water drainage, and there's a filter that has to be put into the ground that filters it out, all your sewage and everything, so that it can drain into the ground and supposedly be safe. Well, apparently it's not very safe, because people's pharmaceuticals that they're taking orally, which are a lot, everybody's taking something, is seeping into the ground now and into the water, and they're re-drinking it. Isn't that unbelievable?
Oh, I've heard that, but I've heard about birth control. It is recycled into the tap water in a lot of towns because the water processing plants can't get that out. And so I've even heard that birth control may be a large part of why so many men are becoming more feminine.
Yes, and birth control is highly toxic to women too, and it causes them to make different decisions than if they weren't on birth control, especially when it comes to choosing a mate or what age that they choose a mate. And so I would strongly urge any women who might be listening to this, if you are on any kind of birth control, consider getting off of that entirely. It's devastating to women and men. But another thing that's certainly feminizing men are jabs, because the jabs have estrogen in them, and the soy, like you mentioned, and soy is in so many ingredients when you read the ingredients I've found.
Oh yeah. When I went gluten-free years ago, and I started learning about soy quickly after, and I was like, well, maybe I should kind of wean myself off of the soy. And so it took me a few months before I really looked at all the things I was buying enough to really avoid the soy oil. And then I would accidentally every once in a while get something with soy, and what do you know, I would react to it and have stomach problems, and I'm sure it was affecting my hormones and stuff. And I'll tell you what, I was lactose intolerant as a kid, and I grew up on soy milk. And I told my mom everything about soy and gluten and stuff, and I was like, but please don't feel bad. I know that soy milk was like the only alternative to cow's milk when I was a kid here. When I was a little kid, my town was a food desert, and all of the stores were just filled with junk. There was no such thing as organic, no such thing as gluten or soy free. There was no such thing as, stuff that had fewer ingredients or anything like that. Like, it was just horrible here. Like, we just did not have access to hardly any fresh fruits or vegetables, or, anything without sugar or corn syrup. And in the early 2000s, or maybe it was the late 90s, that they started the whole fat-free foods. So everything became fat-free, and so it tasted horrible, so they had to add tons of sugar to make it tolerable. And yeah, it was pretty horrible, our food selection when I was growing up.
One of the things that this gal, and I cannot find the video anymore, but it was on SGT Report years ago, that Sean had a gal on that was studying the horse injuries, and she was noticing that more and more horses were being put down from horse racing, not just having a horse in your field, but actually the racing horses. And they put them down when they get an injury that's just, they don't give them to some farmer rancher. So the more and more horses were being put down, and she looked into the food they were eating, and lo and behold, it was the wheat glyphosate, I never say it right. And then so because of that, she started looking at injuries in athletes, and we were seeing more and more injuries in athletes because this creates a bad building block for our collagen and bones and things like that. As I can't explain it the way she did. She did a much better job, and if I could find the video I would, but it's so old I couldn't find it. Maybe I can email Sean, but the point is that a person could look into this themselves and look at all the unusual injuries that we're seeing in athletes, broken joints that wouldn't usually happen in that kind of at that age or in that situation, and so knees and shoulders replacements at younger and younger ages. I broke my hip at 27 running a marathon, and I was in perfect health.
Oh
And
my gosh.
the allopathic doctor tried to blame the that classic female triad, accused me of overexercising, having an eating disorder, and osteopenia, which does go hand in, those three things they go hand in hand, but I didn't have a eating disorder. Like, I wasn't anorexic. I overran, but to get a fracture in the neck of your femur was just unheard of, and to not have some other reason for it. And we found no other reason for it. But I think it's these things. Like you said, there was a time certainly no one was paying attention to their health. We were taking in all kinds of junk food. Our parents didn't know better. But that's why we're able to do this now, and the pendulum is swinging. I have a slide up that's talking about fulvic acid, and that's one of the things a person can take, fulvic and humic acid, also known as Shilajit. I'll spell it in the chat, and then I'll put it on the screen. That this is something that can pull the Monsanto stuff out of your body, and you can start doing that. Somebody could start taking that right away as a supplement, because again, our food doesn't have the stuff in it that it's supposed to have, and this can help supplement, but it also can chelate and pull the Monsanto out, and that's something that both you and I are taking, and you and I have tried to source where we think the best stuff is, and one of the ways I did that, and you can say how you source your supplements, and you can mention some other things, supplements, and but the Shilajit, I sourced it based on reviews. I went and read the reviews of how it was helping people or not helping people, and then always look into the company you're buying from, so that you guys can make sure you're not actually buying from big pharma. But you can talk about how you've sourced these things for yourself, Nathan.
Oh, trial and error, honestly. um, I've tried a couple different brands of Shilajit, and I was listening to a video about it one day, and the guy was talking about getting raw Shilajit, because I guess the type of Shilajit that comes as like a goo, it's like really gooey, that's heated to like extremely like smelting ore level of heat, like thousands of degrees, in order to process it for some strange reason. Where like the animals, like the whole reason that Shilajit was discovered was because the nomadic natives to the was it the Himalayas, they started to notice that the mountain goats were licking this black goo off of high parts of the mountain. And so they went up there to investigate this is one of the stories of the origin of Shilajit. There's actually a lot. And it goes way back into Ayurvedic medicine in India too. But, supposedly these people, they went and they collected this black goo and ate it, and it like gave them a ton of energy. And so then, that's when they started like collecting it and harvesting it from the mountains. So why they decided that it needs to be heated to 2,000 or 3,000 degrees in order to process it, I don't know, but that's what a lot of people are doing. And so I found some raw, less processed Shilajit. They're like pressed tablets, and they seem to be giving me a lot more energy than the gooey stuff I tried. That stuff was good. It was still helpful. But it didn't, that type didn't give me as much energy as what these raw tablets are giving me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking the same thing as you. So if anybody wants to know what we're taking exactly, my email is ladyliberty@countermail.com, or I'll see if I can, while we're on here, send an invite to the Solomon Report Telegram, because we're gonna talk about other supplements, and we don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed. You just, if you're going to start with anything, this is the one I would recommend to start with. But maybe you have something else you'd want to put at the top of the list to recommend.
Um, Shilajit is a pretty good one for like overall health. Um, I take really specific supplements because I have really specific issues. Like some of my top supplements are Hawthorne, because I have a heart arrhythmia. Dude, I had a little bit of heart damage from the Lyme disease, and then 2019 I ended up going into septic shock, and that really damaged my heart quite a bit. And uh, so I take that Hawthorne, and as long as I take it every day, I don't have near as many heart arrhythmias, but every once in a while I still get them. And then bee pollen is a really good one. Local bee pollen. If you suffer from allergies, airborne allergies, it can really help. You want to get the straight granules of it to start with, because this stuff is so potent. If you have really, really bad allergies, you got to just start by taking one little granule of the bee pollen a day in order to adjust. It's kind of like a natural allergy shot to all your local allergens, the flowers, the weeds, and everything else. The bees go, all around, and they visit all the flowers, and then they bring that pollen back, and then they collect it, and it's pollen from all your native plants. If you can't get, local bee pollen, then just try to find bee pollen that was at least sourced in your state or area.
I would say Facebook is a good place to go for some of these things. Sorry to interrupt. Hold
Yeah.
that thought for just a second. I went onto Facebook to find local dairy farmers so I can get my milk and my cream and my eggs until I have my own chickens, or we may not ever get a milking cow. But I went to Facebook to find that there are people that will travel to sell, so they actually travel from elsewhere to come to me. But if it's important enough for you guys to get your health on board, travel for it. Buy so much that you don't need to go a lot. But go ahead to the next thing you were gonna say.
Um, Moringa is another great, more overall herb. It's very, very high in vitamins and minerals, and it's used in like third world countries that are where the people are they have malnutrition. uh, Malnourished,
Do you
yeah.
mind spelling
They
that?
Moringa. Yeah, I'll spell it in the chat.
Thanks. Perfect.
Yeah, moringa is really good for detoxing. There's stuff like chlorella and spirulina algae. Those can be really good. From my experience, chlorella is gentler than spirulina. Because I've taken both, and the spirulina I can only take, every once in a while, because it can hit me with a hard Herxheimer.
One of my favorite things that I take right now is magnesium L-threonate. Because that actually has given me energy too. There's different types of magnesium, and I'm gonna show one of the slides here that this are my local guy who cured his own cancer. He talks about the magnesium L-threonate. Another one is magnesium glycinate. So those are two that I also like to take. By the way, everybody, I'm on about 10 or 12 supplements. How many are you taking, Nathan?
Um, well, depending on the day, anywhere from a dozen to 2 dozen. I take a lot. But like I said, I have some really specific problems, and so I take really specific herbs. And a lot of my supplements I create myself. I've been practicing herbalism for probably 5 years now. Well, let's see. I think 2018 was the first time I ever made a tincture, and so I make a lot of tinctures. I make teas. I make what are called tea extracts, and those are actually, despite tea being in the name, they're actually a type of powder extract. And I also, my favorite thing to make is infused oils. Um, and so I take a lot of different oils. I put them both for my skin and my beard and my hair, but I also take them orally too. Frankincense infused oil was a big help in healing my gut. It actually helped heal bleeding ulcers in my colon. I went gluten free, and I started taking infused frankincense oil I made, and within 30 days it healed all my ulcers that I had for a year and a half. I had constant bleeding for a year and a half. And so frankincense is amazing. Please don't take essential oils internally. They're very toxic to your liver to take orally on a regular basis. Once in a while, okay, but it's not good to take essential oils inside your body very often. And
And so
so
you're saying that the essential oils. So if you were going to look on like Rocky Mountain Oils, I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but that's the company I decided to start buying stuff through, and I changed my mind after talking to you. Everything they had was an essential oil. So if it just says essential in front of it, that's the problem. So for people who aren't making it like you, can you recommend what we're looking for? Is the word essential just gone, or does it say something else?
you want to look for tinctures, whole plant extracts, and glycerins. That you want to stay away from anything that, like, say you're looking for a ginger extract for occasional upset stomach. You want to find something that uses the whole ginger in the extract. If you find something and it says this has 10% gingerol in it, or if you're looking at turmeric and it says 20% curcumic acid, then those are isolated compounds, and those are not that much different than a pharmaceutical drug, because they're only extracting one or two or three specific chemicals from the herb. And herbs work better when they're extracted in a more holistic form, and that's why I suggest tinctures, glycerins, and whole plant powder extracts. And some herbs like moringa, you can just get straight powder. It's not an extract. You can just throw it in your smoothie, throw it in a shaker cup with some protein powder or whatever. There's plenty of herbs out there that are just powder, and you don't need an extract for every herb. There's a lot of herbs that are great just as making them as a simple tea, in a kettle on your stove. So don't dismiss simple things like the teas and powders in favor for always getting an extract, like a tincture or something.
Also, when I went to one of the local grocers and I was buying some of these supplements, and turmeric curcumin is one of the ones I take, I asked how they source. So you can always talk to these grocers and ask how they're sourcing their vitamins. You can easily look into most companies and get down to the nitty gritty of who owns it. There are other people that do the work of some of that and sell their own things. I don't make any money promoting any of these people, but there's a website. It's Dr. Tom Cowan, DrTomCowan.com, and he has a bunch of these. He does podcasts, he does videos. He's an allopathic physician that has done the work of teaching people how to live in a more healthy lifestyle. He's got a great book on cancer. He will actually tell you in the book and on his podcast what to eat, and of course throwing out sugar is the first thing. But and then we take the supplements because the food is so depleted of the supplements. That's why we talk about supplements. It's easy for someone to say, well, you just need to eat better. You just need to eat the food that have the proper supplements. Well, that's good if you can grow your own food. And that's one thing that Nathan and I recommend as much as possible to learn how to grow your own food. You're going to have to do work. There's work to getting healthy. Sadly, as we have talked about, a lot of people will take the white coat allopathic method over changing the diet and doing the supplements and cutting out the stuff that they love. It is work. You have to change your diet. You're going to need to learn how to garden. Mindy mentioned filtering water. And you can do that yourself with rocks, activated charcoal, and good dirt and UV light. And you can make your own filter. So these things, they're work, but you can do it. Start talking to your natural grocer, whether it's that brand name or not. Whoever has the natural stuff, ask them questions about how they're sourcing their vitamins. And then listen to people. We can only do so much today because I have to go mow a lawn, literally, for one of our rentals. But we'll continue this, and we'll do this again. And I'm not ending it right now. I'm just mentioning, throwing some of these things out real quick. And then Dr. Klinghardt, who had started the Sophia Institute, because you want to talk about this. So before I go, I want you to bring up the stuff on autism. Dr. Klinghardt is one of the wonderful, also trained medical doctors that has treated autism and autoimmune disorders, cancer, you name it. And I think if you listen to Dr. Cowan and if it feels right what he says, and I believe it is, all these things fall under the same umbrella. It's an imbalance of the body, and we got to bring it back into balance. And we need the supplements because we have the chemicals in the air, because we have the chemicals in the food, and we can't always avoid it. And we have taken big pharma medicines in the past that we have to try to clear out of our body, and parasites. So go on about the autism that you wanted to talk about, please.
Oh, well, yeah. So I was doing some research on, natural alternative methods for helping with autism last night, because, autism rates are really spiking here in America for whatever reason. And what I was finding out was there is a huge link between behavioral issues, not just with autism, but with any behavioral issue can almost always be traced back to your gut bacteria and your fauna and flora within your intestines. And some of the stuff I was reading was suggesting a gluten-free diet and also casein-free. I think I'm saying that right. And casein is
Yep.
I guess a chemical in milk. I don't know. I speculate that maybe raw milk would be better than the pasteurized milk. That casein might help. Because raw milk can help heal your guts too. I was lactose intolerant up until I started buying raw milk, and over the course of about 6 months, I would drink just a little bit more of it every day. It started literally just a sip because I was so reactive to it. And after 6 months, I could drink a whole cup and feel great. But yeah, and leaky gut is apparently a huge problem with autism too. And leaky gut is a damaged intestinal wall. It can, become damaged through chemicals in the food and the water and the air, like you were saying. And you want to avoid the things that are damaging your intestines, and at the same time building back that good bacteria in there. And then something I didn't mention earlier about the oxytocin, what my Lyme disease doctor told me was that low oxytocin levels are also associated with autism. And he had told me about some studies where autistic children were given oxytocin and they started making eye contact and their social behaviors got better. And they were able to connect on a more emotional level.
That makes sense, because earlier you were saying because your level of oxytocin was nil, you weren't having connections with people like you would now. That makes a lot of sense.
Right. And yeah, and oxytocin is just like it's an overlooked hormone, especially in the male brain. And taking the oxytocin pills that I took, it helped so much. Like, they gave me a shot at first just to see if it would work, and they checked on me every 5 minutes and for about 15 minutes, and then right at 15 minutes, nurse walks in and she's like, how do you feel? And I said, I feel so warm and fuzzy, like I'm getting a big hug from a teddy bear. It feels great. And like literally, and like I think my face turned a little red too, so like increased blood flow to my face a little bit. And that I did that shot immediately after getting 70 of the prolotherapy shots in my spine. And so it really helps negate the pain and inflammation after the prolotherapy too. But yeah, oxytocin, it plays a huge role in everybody's brain. And it's very important for social bonding. And for years now, I've been trying to find herbs that increase oxytocin, but there's really not been a lot of studies on herbs and how they affect oxytocin. There's lots of studies for herbs that affect the serotonin and dopamine receptors, which they're similar hormones, but they are different.
I wanted to go through this. I have a slide up from the gentleman that cured his own cancer here locally that I have a video of all these slides if anybody wants it. Again, my email is ladyliberty@countermail.com, and then he emailed me the slides. What I have pulled up here is supplements that he took for cancer. I recommend a lot of these supplements to just have. One of the things he mentioned is we should treat our bodies for all illness all the time, because it all stems from the same imbalance, like you said, the biome of our gut and all these things. And so again, the Shilajit being the very first thing I would recommend, and that there was a couple slides on that I had up here, but he talks about all the vitamins from A, C, and E. Now it looks like a lot, and you're like, oh my gosh, would I really have to do all these things every day? Not necessarily, because a person listening probably doesn't have cancer, or maybe does, but if you have autoimmune disorder, or like Nathan with Lyme, you might just try anything and everything. And again, source the company that's making it. Definitely look at reviews if you're buying online. But he talks about he shows different mushroom extracts here. Another one is chaga, CHAGA. Dr. Callan talks about giving his cancer patients that had melanoma chaga, and it just disappears. like even tumors in the brain. It's not a spreading disease like people think it is. Please consider listening to on Audible or buying the book by Dr. Cowan called Cancer and the New Biology of Water. It has changed my understanding of disease completely. And then he also wrote The Contagion Myth and how viruses aren't real. Cayenne pepper, these are things that are easy to get into your diet because you can just buy them in a capsule form. Look for the vegetable casing, because there's casing for supplements that can have pork in it. And Nathan and I will tell you guys to avoid pork to all extent. D3 you should be taking with K2, and K2 can be found in lots of green leafy vegetables that you're probably not getting right now because it's the beginning of the growing season. So you can get a supplement to take with your vitamin D. And when he talks about turmeric, he says you should be taking as much as 3,000 milligrams a day, because a lot of these turmerics, like the one I bought, was only 500. So I found another one that's 2,500. And then he mentions yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention if you have low blood pressure issues, to be very careful with turmeric because it thins the blood quite a bit. And so if you're already struggling with low blood pressure, it can make it worse. And you also, you don't want to take turmeric or white willow bark extract before going in for any kind of surgery because they increase bleeding. You want to stop any blood thinning herbs, I think about 2 weeks at least before any kind of surgery.
And I'll just mention a couple more. On the ashwagandha, I started taking. Please email if you want to know the brand I have. The brand I have also comes with, it also has vitamin C and B6, but it has L-tyrosine. It has a lot of stuff in it, but they call it adaptogenic formula with adrenal health, and it has changed my mood. If anybody has anxiety, I highly, highly, highly recommend the ashwagandha, particularly the one I found. And again, like you said, Nathan, through trial and error, this one has turned my life around. I had anxiety where I didn't even want to leave the house. Going on trips was freaking me out. Definitely didn't want to go camping. It was the weirdest thing. And it could be a hormonal thing because it happened just a few years ago. And I'm in my 40s now. So I don't know if it's the hormone changes or if it was outside bad foods or what exactly brought on the anxiety. And it could have been all the stuff dealing with COVID. That just stressed me out. This has helped so much. The magnesium L-threonate has definitely upped my energy. And the Shilajit, I have high blood pressure, so I'm glad I'm taking a high dose of turmeric, and I'm also taking the fermented beets for that. So anyway, we take a lot of different supplements because it's hard to get it all in your food, but you got to learn to cook, grow a garden. And another thing, and I'll bring up one more thing, and then I'm going to have you give us a last thought for the day, and then I got to run. If you can, get in a sauna for, if you can stand it, 30 to 40 minutes, because if you can induce a fever in your body, that will clear out a lot of illness, but specifically cancer. There was a physician, and I forgot to pull it up, so I don't have his name in front of me, but if you want to email me, I'll get it for you, who induced in end-stage cancer patients, this was before they were burning and poisoning with radiation and chemo, he induced a fever in his patients of 105 for 30 days. They were at end-stage cancer. There was nothing else going to make them live, and 60% of them survived just from the fever induction. So a sauna, I had some information on a sauna, some printout stuff, or you can read on. If somebody wants it, again, email me. And then with that, I will ask you if you have any last thoughts you wanted to mention before we go today, Nathan.
I forgot to mention earlier that sea salt and baking soda, not the Arm & Hammer. Please look at like Bob's Red Mill baking soda.
And is it Celtic sea salt?
You can do any kind of sea salt. I know a lot of people are really on the Celtic craze right now, but a lot of stores are running out of Celtic sea salts. Any kind of natural sea salt is good. I actually, for many years now, have been taking sea salt and baking soda and putting it in water as part of Lyme disease protocol. And we salt, we as human beings in the modern world don't get near enough minerals, especially minerals from natural salts. We used to preserve almost all of our food in salt, and with the invention of the refrigerator, the human diet really cut back on salt, natural salt, not sodium chloride, real natural salt. And our bodies, we need that salt. We need all those minerals. There's a lot of minerals in sea salt. Some sea salts have like 70 to 90 different minerals in them. And our bodies need salt to stay hydrated. And I know that sounds weird, but without salt, our cells can't hold water in them. And a lot of people are honestly chronically dehydrated because they don't drink enough water and they don't eat enough salt.
That's right. And I did do that one day, and I kind of forgot about it since then, so I'll have to do it again. And I did not notice anything different that day, but you did say don't do it every day, maybe just a couple times a week, because I've forgotten to do it since then.
Well, that one was specifically the radiation detox.
Oh, right.
Right. So I do a half a teaspoon of sea salt with like just a pinch of baking soda. That radiation detox is it's a tablespoon of sea salt, a tablespoon of baking soda, in 4 cups of water, and then you drink 1 cup, wait 2 hours, drink another, and you wait 2 hours in between until you've drank all 4 doses. And that is like a once or twice a week type of thing. That's a little bit different than just adding a pinch of sea salt, pinch of baking soda to a glass of water every day to help stabilize your minerals and your hydration.
So I need to get back on that. Just daily, a pinch of sea salt and a pinch of baking soda in my water. Got it.
Yeah. I honestly add a half a teaspoon of the sea salt to my cold fridge water, and I mix that around. So I put a little bit in that, and then I also make like my own like little cup every day with higher amounts of the sea salt. So there's like, I'm getting a little bit from my fridge water, and then I'm getting a higher dose once a day as well.
And last thing with water, you mentioned that if you have to drink tap water, and hopefully you guys don't have the fluoride in your tap water, but if you do have chlorine, if you let it sit out for so many hours, it dissipates, right?
Yes, it does. It evaporates out. And also making sun water, just setting a pitcher of water out in the sun all day, that energizes the water. It helps to detoxify the water too, helps clean it of any kind of living organisms that might be in it. I don't know if you guys have ever tried sun tea, but sun tea is amazing. And if you make it exactly the same, but you don't set it in the sun, it tastes a lot different.
Yep. Okay, well, I'm sorry to have to run, but we got responsibilities over here with our rentals, and there is a lawn that's just got to be mowed. So I appreciate the time that you have taken with me, and I'm sure you'll do this again in the future, and we'll cover more ground. What do you say?
All right, sounds like a good plan.
All right, well, everybody have a great day. Be blessed. Get in the sun, get your vitamin D, and start your supplements. And peace be with you.
Shalom.
Shalom. Bye.
Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. rides I buy. With someone never seems to hesitate to fight to stop. Here's to progressive liberation through a government sanction. Here's to fiscal conservation through some fiat inflation. Transhuman singularity, coercive cryptocurrency. I break down this tyranny in your name. In your name. In your name. In your name. What we've